Hello, good morning and welcome. It's Tuesday, November the 11th. Today it's Ethics Day in government. A minister sent out on the morning round of TV interviews with a story to show the government's commitment to high ethical standards. What could possibly go wrong? My name is Anne McElvoy from Politico.
And my name is Sam Coates of Sky News. Yes, Ethics Day, but a bit more do as I say, not as I do on this occasion, because ministers want to shine the spotlight on ethics in local authorities. That's the announcement this morning. Local authorities given new powers to root out bad actors. Steve Reid announcing sweeping reforms, including a mandatory code of conduct and tougher sanctions for misconduct. Good thing to get everyone's houses in such good order.
This house is always in order if you don't look at what's going on behind us, wherever we are recording. Welcome to Politics at Sam and Anne's, the podcast that gives you everything you need for the day ahead in British politics. Being the 11th of the 11th today, it is, of course, Armistice Day, marking the agreement signed at the end of World War I. At 11 o'clock, there'll be a 2-minute silence and a ceremony at the Cenotaph in Westminster. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, as well as Nigel Farage, will be among those attending. And there will be a wreath laying inside Parliament by the Commons and Lords speakers for those on the parliamentary estate.
It is also the first day back from the mini autumn recess. Welcome back, everybody. And that meets statements about a huge number of things since MPs disappeared just last Thursday.
That already feels like an age ago. Following the chaotic, mistaken release of 2 more prisoners last week, David Lammy's first day back after mini recess looks like being a tough one. Not only will he have to face justice questions this afternoon, there are signs that the Tories will table a motion referring him to the Privileges Committee too. They're claiming that Lammy misled Parliament last week during DPMQs with obfuscation about when he really found out about the mistake in that process.
And Lammy's woes don't mean any let up over in the Home Office. On Monday, it was confirmed that another deported migrant under the one-in, one-out scheme has returned to the UK by small boat. Happily, at 2:30, Permanent Secretary Antonia Romeo will face questions in front of the Home Affairs Select Committee on the work of that department.
Interesting use of the word happily there from Sam Antonio Romeo.
For us.
Going through the mill, exactly. Happily for those of us who cover these things. And that will be a time to respond to yet another round in the court ping pong over the asylum seeker hotel saga in Essex. At 12, we get a written judgment from Mr. Justice Mould on Epping Forest District Council's application for an injunction that would block asylum seekers being housed at the Bell Hotel in Essex. You remember that the government won the last round on this. Will it be overturned?
We will have to wait and see. Never preempt the judge. Anyway, it's Monday. That means the Sky Times YouGov voting intention. Reform UK come out on top on 26%. That's down 1 on the week. Tories are up 2 on 18%. Labour on 19%, down 1. Lib Dems on 14, down 1. And Greens on 15. So a couple of small things. The Tories edging up just a little bit, still in the margin of error, but it's psychologically quite important at the moment. Almost now neck and neck with Labour, and also the gap between the Greens and Labour is at 4 percentage points, and that hasn't narrowed as some in Labour were fearing. So that will be a bit of relief.
Oh, indeed. And Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper travels to Niagara in Canada for the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting. She'll be spending time today and tomorrow with Marco Rubio, her counterpart in the US. We're told that they are bonding well. Mind you, I can't quite imagine them briefing that they're not bonding well. But anyway, Yvette Cooper wants to bring up Sudan there. We saw that horrific massacre in a maternity hospital that occurred last week. She's got one-on-one talks with Rubio tomorrow. I'm guessing those 3 letters, the BBC, will also be mentioned, Sam.
I would imagine so, because they're definitely going to be raised in Parliament today. That's one of the biggest political issues, inescapably, however hard I try to avoid it. And it's where we get to see all the big political parties stake out their positions in light of the BBC turmoil. There's a lot going on here, and it is directly relevant to the political scene. So we're going to have to tackle it. My first big question is one directly for you, Anne. Do you think that Donald Trump's demand for compensation is actually going to result in money being paid out? Or do we think apology alone will work? Because the two different political paths that we could go down are very, very different, both for government as well as the BBC, I think.
Well, let's separate out the injured language that President Trump and his team are using from the legal part. On the language, he wants to make a point, Sam, that he's often made, that the mainstream media are in some way out to stop him governing. But he does also like winning actual money in settlements. And he has form indeed on that. He has taken money in settlements from Paramount in the US for about $16 million after a case there where he alleged deceptive editing of an interview. He tends to go down this track of saying it was intentional. The BBC's defense here will be that it was in no way intentional to damage him. It was a mistake in the editing, but it was in no way intended to be harmful to him. He's also taken money elsewhere from CBS News in the US. So we know that he can do this. We also know that he's bringing the case in Florida. It's out of time to bring a libel case in the UK. And anyway, the settlements are small, so he's going that way. Now, I'm relying here a lot on Joshua Rosenberg, who you'll remember, Sam, was a very long-term, very esteemed legal affairs editor at the BBC, but now independently on Planet Substack. And he has a good analysis saying that the lawyers for Trump are not likely to be impressed with the BBC's assertion that the purpose of editing the panorama clip of his comments there and rousing of the crowd in the run-up to January 6th was to convey the message of the speech so that Panorama's audience could better understand how it was received by President Trump's supporters. That is effectively going to be the BBC's line of defense. It was explanatory, but as Rosenberg is saying, he doesn't seem to think that that would wash and thinks it would be better to draft a retraction and a more fulsome apology in terms the president's lawyer finds acceptable. Settling, he says, won't be cheap, but it will be cheaper than $1 billion.
Yes, because as you say, a lot of these media versus Donald Trump cases end in voluntary settlement, but the politics of voluntary settlement for a license fee funded organization, compulsory for anyone that has a TV, that has a link to government because the BBC appoint the chair, is just agony. And I do wonder if there is a fine, will the BBC be forced to find the money for that from within their budgets, because it will be a huge chunk of their budget, and presumably the government and taxpayer wouldn't step in. I mean, in the context of our budget coming up, that seems unlikely, but nailing that question down will probably be the job of the opposition when it comes to questioning Lisa Nandy later this afternoon when she appears before Parliament. You know, and that's just one part of the politics. You can sort of see how things are shaping up. Tories and Reform say that there's a big cultural issue at the BBC, sort of gearing up for a bigger fight. But on the other side, the Greens and the Lib Dems are looking to block one particular board member, Theresa May's former Director of Communications, Robbie Gibb, from helping with the hunt for the replacement Director General. So that's a sort of assault on the other side. And, you know, the line of Lisa Nandy to date has been to try and sort of tread holding that pole without falling either side off the tightrope, and sort of working out what to say, because look, I make no apologies about this. I find this a difficult subject. I think that talking about other media organisations can feel like navel gazing, but I was sharply corrected by a Labour advisor yesterday who texted me to say, we are heading to a world in which the BBC is the biggest political football of 2026 because of the licence fee debate. And I can kind of see that being true.
I think the licence fee positioning is exactly where this is going to go. So I think your source was right there, and your reflection on it is correct as well. Because remember, what was Tim Davie focused on before this blew up? He wanted to be the Director General in place when the new charter got underway from 2027. That clearly won't be the case now. So Playbook has an interesting line in the coverage this morning that the Conservatives at the moment are not going hard on the licence fee. I think there's always been rather different views, particularly in the Conservative Party in recent years, about whether they encourage the BBC to move into something more like a subscription service, although there are massive sort of technical issues about how you get there, but to move in that direction. At the moment, they are holding off. I don't think Reform and Nigel Farage will be very quiet on this. There's great scepticism there from Nigel Farage historically about the BBC, but I think the conversation, once we turn from the fate of Tim Davie and Deborah Turness, the outgone DG and heads of news, is where does this leave the beginnings of this negotiation on the licence fee and how the BBC is to be funded in future, and how does this settlement, if it is a settlement, then play into that? It's not exactly the best marketing, is it? Can continue to pay your licence fee, we'll raise it in line with inflation, and by the way, we're going to take a huge chunk of it to give to Donald Trump's injured pride and sense that he was traduced.
I do wonder whether this ends up then circling back to other UK politicians. No pressure, Yvette Cooper, when you talk to Marco Rubio. No pressure, Keir Starmer, because you can see it being something that he might decide to raise because of the political trauma that pushing ahead with forcing a settlement might cause. So those are all the areas in which what's going on in the corporation bleed over into domestic politics. I just want to say, sort of, journalist to journalist, good luck to everybody. There are, at the BBC, there are fantastic journalists in BBC News, and it will be hard watching everything that goes on over your head, but you will do, many of you, there is much brilliant work that goes on there. So good luck in the face of all of those challenges. Shall we just hop onto the budget for a little bit, because there are developments that are kind of the cornerstone of this podcast.
15 days to go, and Rachel Reeves is still assiduously pitch rolling the budget. Yesterday, she used an interview to drop heavy hints that she would restore the 2-child benefit cap in full, despite rumours that it might get only a partial reinstatement for some claimants. She also warned if she doesn't put up taxes, she'd have to cut spending on capital budgets, thereby risking further damaging productivity. So it's kind of promise and a threat there all in one.
That's right. Now, we will make no apology for talking about the budget pretty much every day up to the 26th. Fascinatingly, we've actually had a challenge, Anne, from one of our regular listeners about how we framed the debate, or certainly how we framed the debate yesterday. In yesterday's podcast, we talked about the problems that the government could face putting up taxes, which I think is a legitimate question. But one regular listener, someone with a massive track record on the left of British politics, inside and outside of the Labour Party, has come for me specifically. He says
that's the way I like it.
He says that isn't the choice at this budget. He says nobody wants to put up taxes, and that we should be describing the debate in a way that reflects more fairly the debate that the Treasury are having to wrestle with. Now, let me allow him to put it in his own words. The next voice that you're going to hear is Matthew McGregor. He was leading Barack Obama's digital campaign in 2012 in Chicago. He led Labour's digital campaign in 2015. He is now the chief executive of 38 Degrees, and here he is having a go at us.
Hi, Sam and Anne. I'm Matthew McGregor. I run the campaign group 38 Degrees. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller, pushed over the edge to get in touch because of your one-sided budget discussion yesterday, where you talked tax rises, good or bad, and left out the actual choices facing the country. Given the fiscal black hole, the government has got 3 choices. Impose austerity on the country again, raise borrowing significantly, or increase taxes. Now, people will have views about the pros and cons of each option, but ruling out tax rises means risking a mega market backlash or having austerity back again at a time when public services are in an absolute state and people are struggling with the cost of living. Grumpy ministers talking to you and the opposition parties can all make a choice, but they have to be honest about the consequences of what they opt for. And you owe it to us to set out the choices, not just narrow the debate down to is a bad thing good or bad. So how do you plead?
Well, it is a fair challenge, and I think Matthew puts it very well in that message. All I would say, how do we plead? I would plead that we are covering the politics of the budget the way they are at Westminster, not maybe the way, as Rachel Reeves is now fond of saying, that she would like the world to be. And when it comes to saying, well, you've really underweighted the risks of going back to austerity, the other option, I guess, as you could say, you could have much more supply side reform. You could sort of hold your line more on things like benefit cuts, which would then free up some money, which, you know, you could say was short-term pain for longer gain. It's really the parties, or the main parties, Labour and government, who framed it like this, I would say, Matthew, and we are following the way they framed it. Obviously, if you're further to the left of British politics and want a different framing around the budget, you're entitled to have it. It's just that wasn't really the way that Labour set out its argument on the political economy. I don't know if I got away with that in court.
Well, first of all, we really welcome criticism. If you want to critique our arguments, send in a voice note and we'll talk about it. And I absolutely think that Matthew has a point. So thank you, Matthew. If you're dealing with the politics of this moment, of this second. But here's my response to Matthew, which is, if you're sitting in the Treasury, that is the choice. You know, raise taxes, cut spending, or break your fiscal rules. But that's the choice today. I argue that it is not automatic that we had to be where we are today. Rachel Reeves in opposition did not have to stick to Tory fiscal rules. Rachel Reeves at the manifesto point did not have to give the tax commitments that she did in the manifesto to protect certain big taxes. Rachel Reeves at last year's budget did not have to spend so much and borrow so much. Rachel Reeves did not have to leave so little gap, so little headroom between the amount she wanted to spend and the amount that she limited herself on borrowing. And Rachel Reeves could have used at any point during the year some of the massive events like the trade war in order to get off the hook of the self-imposed problem that she's created with the combination of fiscal rules and running things very, very hot when it comes to the amount she's spending compared to her borrowing limit. So yes, Matthew, I totally concede that as of today, those are the choices, but they have not been the choices for Rachel Reeves over the period that she has been in the Treasury brief. That would be my response to that. So keep them coming in. We want to hear from listeners. Anne, I just wonder, in the last 2 minutes, can I tell you about a very fun story from my colleague Faye Brown?
I would so love some fun at this point.
Now, it's from my colleague Faye Brown about the teething birthing problems from left-wing splinter party, your party. Now, we had been told that things had been patched up between its two founders, Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. But now there are tensions over the donations which were made in the early weeks after the party's creation was first announced. And this is all about what is happening to a whopping £800,000 that was donated in the first flush of excitement when your party was first announced. Because it is all currently sitting in an account controlled by Zara Sultana, one of the two bosses, and hasn't yet been transferred to the Your Party accounts. So she's in sole control of that account, we are told, and that donations held by Zara will be transferred to Your Party in the coming weeks. But there's a big standoff because at the moment, her spokesman told Sky News, told Faye, that only 600 of the 800,000 would be transferred in case there are costs, expenses and liabilities from the way the party was set up in full. But other people from your party aren't happy about all of this and worried that there's politics at play. So while the principles may be playing nicely in front of the cameras, there is still grumbling at the heart of your party.
Especially that the line in Faye's reporting there that this money would come across in 3 tranches once costs, expenses, and liabilities were settled. That sounds like there's the expectation that some money is going to come off that total. It's funny on this podcast, we've just ended up sort of back where we were at the start, or in the context of the left-wing party, of your party, talking about who is demanding money from whom and on what terms. It's all gone very legal.
It has, but hopefully we have escaped the beady eye of a lawyer with our content today. That's the alarm going off. So let's see what happens today for the BBC, for the budget, and for politics in general. Tomorrow's Prime Minister's Questions, Keir Starmer back in the saddle for that after returning from his travels in Brazil. So I'll see you then, and have a lovely day.
Never a dull moment. See you tomorrow.
Hey, it's Sophie and Will from Sky News.
Too many headlines, too little time?
We get it, and that's why we're bringing you Cheat Sheet.
10 minutes every weekday morning.
All the big stories from politics to pop culture, minus the noise.
No doom scrolling, no spin, just the stories that matter from 2 people who live and breathe the news. Cheat Sheet with Ridge and Frost from Sky News.
Follow Cheat Sheet wherever you get your podcasts.